All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. That's session 84 of Level Up. We have Ken Fairclough with us. Hello, man.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hey, what's going on?
It's great to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Finally, man. When I saw your work, like when you were posting those class stuff like a month ago, I was like, hey, I know this dude, but I really want to have him on Level Up. So, we were actually thinking of that and finally made it happen. So I'm really happy to have you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm super excited to join you guys here.
Awesome. Yeah. Today we are here with Wojtek, me, Darek, and Ken.
Hey guys.
And today's session, Ken will talk about his beginnings and his history, how he has started, and he's gonna show us some of his workflows, I believe, and talk about the teaching experience that he has. So I think the best way to take up that session is if you can introduce yourself properly, Ken, right now.
Cool, yeah. So my name's Ken Fairclough. I'm concept artist at EA Bioware in Austin, Texas. And I've been working in the game industry as an environment concept artist for about 3 years. Did a little bit of work freelance here and there before then, but I started working at Cloud Imperium Games on Star Citizen, and then after that moved on to Bioware, where I worked on Mass Effect Andromeda, and then most recently working on Anthem.
Awesome.
That's awesome, man. Anthem looks great. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's like if you can just enroll on those projects, maybe just before we dive in more into the session, or how it all actually started for you, like because we are all interested to hear the backstory.
Totally. I think there might be a little bit of a echo on someone's end.
Okay.
Is it on my side? Let me mute.
Hello. I have a headphone, so it's I don't know. Yeah, maybe Wojtek, do you have a headphones on or?
Yeah. Let me grab one.
Okay.
Right. I'm muting myself. Sorry.
All right, that's great. Okay, Ken. So go ahead. Right.
Yeah.
Fine.
Cool. Yeah. So I started working in the industry about like three years ago, where I was working on Star Citizen.
So wait, it was your first project ever?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, it was a super fun project to work on. I mean, like the art in that game was like, there's just so much cool stuff. So
yeah, very inspiring. Very inspiring.
Yeah, it was a little intimidating up until that point. I was doing most of my concept work in 2D. Mm-hmm. I had dabbled a little bit in using 3D here and there, and when I came onto the project, I came to realize how important it was to keep up with the other guys to start bringing in 3D into my workflow. So. That's kind of when I took a big dive into utilizing more 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So
now it's like it's in pair 2D and 3D in your workflow, right? Process, because you use a lot of them, and I actually saw the snippet of your class when you were doing those blockouts in 3D, and then you brought it to the Photoshop, drawing in some tiny details with line art, and then you brought it back to like final illustration kind of quality, right? But still, it's like you start with 3D mostly, or you just sketch out before as well. Like how the process looked like, if you can just dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So like I always start off with a 2D sketch. More often than not, it's just like a super simple like napkin sketch, like I actually have some like really loose. I don't know if you could see that. This tiny. Is my webcam
Yes.
Lagging behind. Okay, cool. Like super scribbly, like just like little napkin sketches that like really only I can understand.
I like that phrase, napkin sketch.
Yeah, so like it pretty much always just starts with that, just to kind of get out some quick ideas, and then from there I kind of block out something really rough in 3D, just like super rudimentary primitive shapes, just to kind of get a good feel for the space, which is one of my favorite things about using 3D. Is just like it's just so much easier to get a feel for like the three dimensionality of the space and the perspective.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely one of those folks who I need to see something in front of me first, really, to kind of see the potential and like the final product. So for me, it's really important to, as soon as possible, just block in just kind of like an outer shell and kind of look at that, and then kind of see from there where to take the design. So after I do a really rough block out, then I'll take a screenshot of that and then do like another quick sketch in Photoshop, a little bit more resolved than a napkin sketch, but still pretty loose and quick. And then I go back to 3D and continue to model out some of those shapes. And then depending on the deadline or the purpose of the concept, will depend on like that will dictate, I guess, how far I take that 3D, because it's, working with 3D is really easy to kind of get lost in the details and just go forever and ever. So I find it really important to be constantly cognizant of how much is enough and when to move on and take it further. So
yeah, that's definitely an awesome point you're making here, and you certainly came to this conclusion after a long series of little failures and little wins along the way. And I'm really interested in, because we started talking about your career when you suddenly became an artist on Star Citizen, but there was stuff that you've done before, right? And that was probably a long road, and that's because I love your work. Like the piece I'm seeing right now for the Andromeda here, just wow, fucking awesome, super.
Thank you.
And I'm just interested in hearing a little bit about where it all started for you, and why concept art? Why the hell do you keep going? Why the hell? Obviously, tons of roadblocks. Like,
oh yeah, totally. I think most people can attest to the hurdles and the struggles and stuff like that. It's not. I'd say for most people, it's not something you just kind of pick up and decide to do, and then all of a sudden you're doing it. So I'm sure you guys can attest to that as well. But I've always, like, since I was a little kid, I've always been drawing. I think the thing that really started it for me, and the reason why I hold it dear to my heart is the first time I saw Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
When I was a kid, the first time I saw Star Wars when I was a kid, that's kind of like when the light bulb went off. Like I think that's what really made me a creative person when I was like young, and that's kind of what started getting me like just kind of drawing and doodling, and so ever since then, like I love Star Wars, and I think single-handedly is probably responsible for me wanting to be an artist and just a creative person in general. It wasn't until like the end of high school that I even realized that concept art was like something I could do.
Yeah.
Like all through high school, like I was just kind of drawing, the stereotypical like high school drawings, like heavy metal band logos and skulls and zombies, stuff like that. And then I was playing Half-Life 2, which to this day is still like one of my favorite games. And I got the art book that came with it, and looking through the art book, that's kind of when like I realized, like, oh man, I could make artwork for video games. Like as soon as I made that realization, like that day, I remember the moment I specifically was like, all right, that's what I'm doing.
So did you tell your parents, or that's hey mom, this is what I want to do, or
Yeah.
was that okay? So were they supportive of that idea?
Yeah, definitely. My parents were super supportive of that. Like pretty much right from that point, I was starting to look for schools to attend. Unfortunately, at the time, I was like really naive, and there was a lot that I didn't know, and I was probably overly confident and stuff like that. So I ended up attending 3 years at a private college that was probably not the best choice at the time, because I ended up leaving there with I was definitely not prepared to get a job leaving there, and the problem with that specific school was that the people teaching there didn't really have an understanding of actually working in a professional environment in the games industry.
Yeah, that's something that bothers me a lot about schools that teach art, specifically game dev, or like
they don't have any idea.
Preparing you to sort of to do the job. And I would just say about that, always look at the instructor's artwork or instructor's history or portfolio, and if he does what you want to do, I think that's the point, right? Because if not, totally. they may prepare you for their idea of the industry, which is non-existent, and suddenly you're in the trap.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, 100% agree with that. The other problem with that was because the quality of the work of the instructors there was not the greatest. So the work that I was doing at the time, by comparison of where my work needed to be, was not good at all. But comparatively to like other students, for example, or even the instructors, they perceived my work to be like really great. So like I kept getting kind of patted on the back, and people telling me, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Your work
it's like awesome. A blind corner, right? That you are
following.
It's like suddenly you don't know where the hell are you and what to do next, right? So
yeah, seriously. Like so I ended up graduating there feeling like super cocky and like being really confident and having this ego and being like, oh yeah, I'm totally gonna get a job, and I'm gonna be awesome. And and then I got hit with like a harsh like reality check when I applied to like no joke, I applied to like 30 studios, and I did not hear back from a single one. And then I don't remember how it happened. I think someone through my school connected me with an art director at a studio to critique my work. And they tore my work apart, man. Like they tore me apart. Like I was like crushed for like 2 or 3 days after that.
I have a question about your attitude back then, because most of the time when you hear those backstories, you tend to hear about people that are not confident enough, and they lack sort of this inner I don't know, like just being confident. And it looks like you've been on the opposite side of that. You felt prepared and you felt ready, and that was sort of because of your school environment that sort of tricked you into thinking that you are done, right?
Yeah, totally. It's funny that you mentioned that. I think I may have actually gone the opposite route. I was like super confident then, and now that I have a job, I'm like always super nervous and like really like self-conscious and like so I don't know what happened there, but yeah, it's interesting. I think I think it's definitely mostly the case, like people coming out of college and not knowing, and I think to a certain degree, coming out of school with that attitude in a way did help me. That critique that I got from that art director was like vital. That was pivotal for me because that's what really kind of
crushing enough.
Yeah, it was like that's what made me take a step back and realize like, oh man, everything I've learned in the last 3 years is complete, BS, and I have to kind of, in a way, kind of start over from scratch. And but like kind of having that confidence, I think it gave me the drive, and it gave me the motivation to then go and track down all of the different tools and all the different venues to explore, like getting all the knowledge that I did need to get prepared. So that's when I got really involved with like conceptart.org and posting work on DeviantArt and getting critiqued there. And
so how many years was that? Like actually around 10 years ago, or?
So let's see, I graduated in 2009. So yeah, a little less than 10 years ago. And,
do you have any work from back then? Maybe the stuff that you were creating after college and.
Yeah, totally. Actually, so I have some work that's like pretty much from
something you cringe about, basically.
Yeah. So I actually just pulled up some of this work just recently, and I haven't seen a lot of this work in years. So yeah, a lot of it was like, oh my god. So most of this work is stuff from like the year after I graduated, and I started to like do more work and try and like improve a lot. So I'll just go through these in no real particular order. So like this I think was like right after I graduated. Like
I'm not sure. It's not displaying.
Yeah, did you zoom that in, or do you have it on maybe separate screen? Or
let me see. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry,
okay.
I had that off on my second monitor.
That's fine. We can see that from now.
So yeah, I did this right after graduating. I think like I was playing a lot of Assassin's Creed at the time, and I wanted to do some like cool historical stuff, and like I think my biggest problem was at the time was like I just did not really have a good understanding of composition and like just design and like just basic design fundamentals. Like like this building is literally a cube.
Yeah. And then have a sphere on top.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and like it's like I didn't understand that like painting required like thought out mark making, so I like literally just scribbled on this and I was like, oh yeah, it's done, it looks awesome. So yeah, that's kind of like when I first started kind of getting more into trying to improve. This one, I think this is like my first attempt at like photo bashing, and then like painting on top of it and stuff like that. I think at the time, I still for some reason had this like idea that photo bashing was cheating. So I was like trying to hide the photo bashing by just making a ton of scribbly marks.
The guilt kicks in.
Yeah, it's intense. Like that, I think that's part of the reason why I also like was reluctant to use more photo bashing and use 3D. Like there was this idea that I was cheating, and So let's see. Okay, so this particular piece, when I did this, I remember after I did this, I was like, all right, I think I'm getting somewhere. Like, like the composition is not good.
Way better.
But yeah, I think like the big thing for me was that I was starting to actually like
designing
design like specific buildings and shapes and make things that are more unique and invented. So I think that was a kind of a turning point. So So yeah, as you can tell, like a lot of the old stuff I did was just really busy, and just like a lot of like arbitrary marks, just to kind of. I had this idea that I think a lot of people starting off have. It's a common idea that detail equals quality.
Yeah, exactly. You
So like
works.
yeah, exactly. So if I make a lot of marks and I make a lot of like noise, then it's good then. So yeah, there's a lot of that in a lot of this earlier stuff, I think. This was actually a personal project I was working on with my longtime buddy. We wanted to make a game, and we came up with these like crazy characters and stuff like that. And I still kind of like this guy, actually. Yeah, same deal with this guy. Yeah, I think I was still trying to figure out like what like my like quote unquote style was. I think at the time, and I think a lot of people starting off really struggle with like coming up with their own style and their own unique look. And for a while, like I really struggle with that. Like, oh, I need to have a style. I need to have a a unique look to my stuff. And I remember watching a tutorial where someone said like pretty much to paraphrase, but they pretty much said like you need to have your own identity, your own style. Otherwise, no one's going to remember your work and no one's going to hire you. So like that really stressed me out. And I was like, oh man, I need to have my own style. So I was trying to like find what that is just by trying a bunch of different stuff out. And I think it ended up coming across as like forced and kind of disingenuous. So I actually kind of just gave up on that idea. Like I completely abandoned the idea of having a personal style. I was like, well, I'll just make a lot of work and hopefully it'll just come out on its own.
Yeah, it will resonate in one of them, right? At some point.
Yeah. I think, and I do think that's the key to I guess finding your own style. To this day, I still think that I don't really have a style. I think I kind of feel like my work is somewhat neutral, I think, in terms of its like look, but I don't know. I guess I kind of just like to get over like that stress and like that impending kind of thing of you need to have a style. I decided to just completely forget about it and just make work that excited me. So to this day, that's what I do. I don't really try to emulate a specific style or aesthetic. I just like to make stuff that excites me, and hopefully it comes across.
Oh yeah, man, for sure. And that's a really good point. How like those, when you actually lose yourself a little bit. I was also a little bit like this. I was trying to get my fucking style in there, and that was like 5 years ago, and I was so stressed about having a look and just like you, one day I just was tired of this, like so tired. I was like, God damn it. What about being myself for a while and not trying to imitate or trying to, just loosen up and do what you want. And suddenly that curiosity that rises in you guides you to the realms that nobody else have been or merged together or interpreted in such a manner. I think it's a great point you made about like just losing yourself in the style exploration a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think a lot of people starting out place a lot of unnecessary pressure on themselves. And I think especially in the beginning, you should really just have fun and just make a lot of work. Just make a
making a lot is the unifying point. And if you and when you think you're doing a lot, just try to multiply it by 10, and I think that's where you do a lot of work.
Yeah,
because that's something I discovered once I got into the the studio production or the freelance work. I thought I was doing a lot of work myself, but then you have to multiply it by 10 for the production requirements. And yeah, I mean, now it's normal, but before it was just, the mileage, basically, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's that's another good point. Is it really does prepare you for I guess the quantity of work that you have to do when you're once you're working professionally. It depends on if you're doing freelance or specific studios or projects or whatever. But I remember when I first started working at Cloud Imperium. The turnaround time on that stuff when I was working there at the time was a little bit longer than most places because they wanted stuff to be pretty polished and they wanted a lot of like 3D concepts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they use their concepts they sort of release them as some sort of wallpaper packs or some sort of updates,
like marketing materials.
Yeah.
After getting like used to that, like for I think I was working there for about a year and a half. I kind of got used to that, and then when I went over to BioWare, it was much different. The turnaround times were much quicker, so I had to really get used to like turning out a lot of work pretty quickly. So that modified a lot of like the way I work, but I'm really glad that I made that transition when I did, because I think ultimately that kind of has really like slimmed down and streamlined my workflow now. So it's kind of the same way I work doing personal work now as well.
I think there's a related question in the chat from Edwin, quoting, if you are saying that you're not focusing on making marks and the artwork itself, what are you focusing on in a real AAA game studio? So I think the question is, the art side and the design side of working in the studio, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think focusing on like the mark making of the image, I think that's there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I do think that's a little bit more of like the artist and like the illustration, I guess, side of things, and it depends on what kind of work you're doing at what stage. But the stuff that I have to do at work, it's more about designing the individual elements and the feeling, and not necessarily about making an evocative painting in terms of the brushstrokes and application of tools and marks and brushstrokes and stuff like that. It's more about like, you might end up having nice like, brushstrokes and stuff like that, but it's more about like whatever it is you need to do to help convey the idea that you're trying to convey, so rather than, like if you look at like, I don't know, like James Gurney or like Greg Van Chess, like these awesome illustrators, I think obviously they're thinking about all those things, but they're also, consciously thinking about, how they apply their paint and their marks and stuff
a little
like
bit
that.
more illustrative approach, right?
Yeah.
There's another question about the amount, like the turnaround times for the studio, like BioWare, let's say. I think there's a question about like roughly how many finished pieces did you have to deliver per week, let's say? Was it like 1, 2, 3, or
It depends on the importance of the of that specific design or who needs it or whatever. It really fluctuates, but I would say typically it's like for one finished environment concept. Let me pull up. Let me see. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right, cool. Let me see here. Let me open up a tab and specifically. So like for example, like on this piece, I think was probably about 2 days. So 2 days, it's, let's see, I think like 7 hours a day minus like an hour for lunch, or you know, kind of getting in and out of the office and like talking and the brief, you know, it's
meetings,
stuff like that. So
around 10 hours total, right?
Yeah, it's maybe 2, maybe 3 days on average. But for example, like on a concept that's more like this, maybe that has a lot more architecture and it's very specific to the needs of like the level designers. So for example, like this was for like kind of a boss battle in one of the missions. There's a lot of specific needs for level design and composing the level, not just the environment from like a single shot, but kind of figuring out like what the gameplay
more explained, right? It must be more explained.
Exactly. So something like this maybe would take like a little bit longer, just because, you know, there's a lot more problems you need to solve. And then the same goes for something, you know, like this. This is for like the final mission, so it was really important that we really nail this, and you know, so there was a little bit more iteration time on this one. Not only that, there was like its own challenges, you know, figuring out like how to, you know, create that kind of interior of a Dyson sphere. You know, so it really depends on the concept. I don't think there's like ever like a very strict, you know, thing where like, oh, it has to be done in this amount of time. If not, you're fired.
So yeah, does it happen that, you know, when you're doing that kind of shot, it's like it explains a lot, but are you also providing your clients with like a 3D mock-up that they can actually rotate and, you know, see where did you actually hit those structures that might be not visible on the final illustration? Or how because it will be more like interaction with level designers and environment artists, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good point, and that's something that I'm really passionate about talking about in terms of the use of 3D in concept art, because you know, like you said, a lot of times there is the advantage of being able to provide a 3D asset to the environment artists or to level designers, and that ends up saving them time. So there is a lot of, I think, you know, as I mentioned before, it's really easy to get lost in the details when working in 3D, and kind of, you know, just noodle and make a lot of, you know, details. It eats up a lot of time. But I think as long as you're cognizant of the fact that it, you know, obviously you don't want to take too much time, but upfront, you know, a design might take a little bit longer to fully realize from all angles, 3-dimensionally. But that time ends up getting saved by the 3D artists then saving time on building that, and because you can directly hand off that model to them, and then it's just a matter of kind of like remodeling on top of it or retopologizing. The other nice advantage of that is just collaboration. Specific.
You can actually see your work being put into production from the beginning, right? You don't need to wait till it's all done, or maybe they rechange it completely. You're actually the one who is responsible for the main shapes, for the main blockout, and they can develop it later based on your like final illustration or something, you know? So
yeah, absolutely. So like I think a really important thing that I learned, especially while working on Mass Effect, was that you might design something like from a specific angle, but like that doesn't necessarily mean it translates well into into a game engine, and even if you're designing something three-dimensionally, like you're modeling it out and stuff like that, it still doesn't necessarily mean it translates well to like player scale and stuff like that. So like getting your design and actually putting it into the game engine and then like walking around it and getting a feel for like what the player experiences interacting with that object.
How it affects the gameplay.
Yeah, so it's really important to think about that kind of stuff as well, and it's really easy to I guess to not be mindful of that, because I think up until working on that particular project, that was not something I was particularly aware of, and there would be certain circumstances where like I would hand off a 3D model to an environment artist, and then they would change a bunch of things, and then I would be kind of curious, why were those changes made? Just out of curiosity, and it's because of that reason. Like a lot of times, it just doesn't necessarily translate well into player scale or
exactly. And
even sometimes it goes down to like the way certain surfaces light in the game engine. Like having certain angles on the surface lights better, and it just looks better. There's so many like minor details like that.
Yeah, maybe some of the shapes are even like gone in that particular situation of the lighting, and you might just see like, oh, this was done for nothing, right? So I can just rechange it, or maybe put those details somewhere else, just to kind of show them. There is actually a cool question because by looking at your portfolio, we can all tell that it's very design-oriented stuff. You have like illustrations that with finished details and stuff, but a lot of stuff is actually designed. And there is Edwin is asking, do you guys have any tips in terms of portfolio in combination to the design part? So I believe he wants to actually have the answer on how would you give him the advice on how maybe to kind of practice design, or how to get more into the design, because we can tell there's a lot of people that call things concept art, but they are not really concept art. These are just landscapes and stuff. So I'm wondering what would be your tip on that, and how to maybe develop those design skills. How did you actually develop them?
Yeah, totally. That's a good question. So for me, I was definitely in that realm for a long time of making an image, but the image was not necessarily really concept art, because it wasn't necessarily communicating anything unique or anything designed out with a specific design language or aesthetic shape language like in mind. For me, the biggest thing is, with concept art, obviously we all know you're designing in most cases things that don't exist in the real world. So it's all about using as many tools at your disposal to help communicate your idea in a way that's believable. I think the biggest thing to do that, at least for me, was just observation.
Yeah, it's creating those things that are maybe fictional, but you made them by being a researcher. You just base something at least minimally on something that's already created, and then try reinterpret with your own design language that you develop with time, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Like I think people underestimate the importance of like just reference searching as a skill in itself. Like I almost feel like on resumes, like that should be almost like at the top of the list. It's like, I'm kick-ass at looking for reference. Not me personally, but like that's what the resumes should say. Like it's so important. I was always like super stubborn in terms of like doing studies, and like I was like, oh, that's boring, I don't want to do that. But it's so important. It's so important just based off observation to just redraw things and just fully understand them. But also like teaching yourself to look at reference, but look at it from like a perspective of like understanding that reference. Like what is it about that particular piece of reference that communicates the things that you're after, or you know, and I think just doing that just over a long period of time, like a ton, is just it improves your mental library, and I think just utilizing reference to the fullest extent you can is the most important thing, especially when designing new things that don't exist, and making them feel believable.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. You know, like sometimes I remember myself like being like, oh, I don't want to use the reference. Maybe I'll try to come up with something cool out of nothing. But yeah, it would be like, how can you come up with something fresh or something original if you didn't do a ground, you know, the good research, without like knowing the subject, without trying to understand things, how it works? How would you actually come up with that with having nothing in your brain?
Yeah, I mean, definitely being resourceful. I think that's what you guys mean, right? It's not only searching for references. It's also like traveling, talking to people,
exploring things.
Yeah, having ideas about certain things, and sometimes even unconventional ideas about, like talking about Star Wars. How many of those spaceship shapes are just objects from the street, like, you know, a lamp being Boba Fett's Slave One spaceship, or, you know, like they directly translated those things into designs by being resourceful and creative, right? So knowing what's trick is the thing, right? And looking for references is definitely one of those things. Let's say you have to do an epic sci-fi vista, right? And it's only up to you how awesome you will make it, and you would be surprised how beautiful and awesome real world vistas can be. And you may try to go on and try to invent sort of the look on your own, but at the same time, real Earth already, you know, is 10 steps ahead. So knowing that real world reference, and knowing that how awesome things can look, and starting there is just beyond useful.
You just need to be more open-minded, I guess, because there are some people that believe that maybe they will have amazing ideas while dreaming.
I mean, and sometimes they do, and of course it happens.
It happens, but yeah.
Of course, there are people that just put it out of their heads, like because they studied for so long. It's just their second nature.
Yeah,
and some people just tend to say, "Oh, he's just talented." Right, and suddenly he can just design, he can just come up with things, but at the same time, there's 15 years, 20 years of looking at shit.
Exactly.
And all that.
Yeah,
super cool.
Yeah,
right. It looks like you have a demo for us, right?
Yeah, you are showing.
Or
because I can see that you have a Photoshop open. Maybe we could go to that actually.
Yeah. So there was a couple of things I wanted to show and talk about. It's kind of go a little bit more in depth with my my personal like workflow. That again, it's something that I kind of have just recently kind of refined into something that it's pretty much the same every time now. And it took a few years to get to that. It used to be where, like, you know, it would be different every time, and you know. For the most part, it's the same every time, with the exception of like maybe I'll switch out a specific tool or program. Like for a certain something, I'll use ZBrush instead. But essentially, it's kind of all the same now. So it's like starting with just like, you know, super rough sketches, and then just slowly refining from there and honing in on the design. That's something that I used to make the mistake of trying to just right off the bat like design the finished design or finished image, rather than trying to like iterate and just kind of start loose and hone in on that from there. So So what I have open is, excuse me, a 3D scene of an image I'm currently working on.
That's awesome.
Thanks. It's the but I thought it would be important to show the wireframe on this though, because it's important to know that I am by no means a 3D modeler. Like this topology is so broken.
Yeah, it's some points like you can work dirty but have a clean works. So if that works, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I guess the way I see it is I know enough of the 3D tools in order to
create a clean design, right? So
yeah.
To actually care about every every kind of phase of the topology and stuff. So if that's presenting your idea and it's not crashing anything, it's yeah,
totally. Like so. Getting into 3D, and this is part of the reason why I kind of wanted to show this also and talk about this, because when I was teaching my class, I think one of the things that I really found it important to get across is I think to a lot of people, using 3D and stepping into using 3D in their workflow is really intimidating at first. I know for me, like I was kind of terrified. I was like, oh, I'll never be able to use 3D. You know, I look at the work of like, Fausto De Martini and all those awesome guys. Like, and I'm like, oh my God, their work is so amazing. I'll never be able to do stuff like that. Why even bother trying? But I think it's important to know that it really doesn't have to be intimidating. Like you can really get a good handle on just like the super basic tools.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I use 3ds Max, and there's so much like stuff you can do in 3ds Max, and that's part of the reason why I love it so much. But the basic tools are really easy to learn and really easy to understand, and there's a ton. They're super versatile, just like the basic tools. Can
I ask, can you do me a favor? Could you maybe rotate this environment just to show us a little bit of that space? It looks so interesting. I would love to see that. It might be a little bit laggy, but we are just streaming.
I'll try to go slow.
Okay.
So yeah, when I was first starting out, looking at other people's work, super intimidating and stuff like that. But I think once you get a really basic handle on the tools, there's so much you could do with it. And I think one of the things it's important to get over is like the idea that things need to be clean and perfect production models. Because like that just eats up so much time, and I think in the design process it really it slows you down, and it takes away any of the spontaneity of designing new stuff. It's I personally find it like helpful to just kind of like pretty much just crash stuff together and kit bash stuff to make my shapes, and not really care too much about like topology or weird stuff going on, because like to worry about that stuff would just eat up so much time.
Yeah, and it might destroy your flow, right? It might just make you distracted by those things.
Yeah, the way I see it is, as long as it lights properly, that's really all I care about. And even still, sometimes, like I'll show you in a little bit, actually. Sometimes in the render, because the model is so janky, like sometimes there are some weird artifacts and like weird normals and smoothing groups and stuff like that. And I try not to really care about that, because the way I see it is like the amount of time it takes to fix that could easily take like an hour to go and fix all of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But to go in Photoshop and literally just paint it out is like 10 or 20 seconds, So yeah, so a lot of times the render, like straight out of Keyshot, doesn't look like that clean. Like there's still a lot of like, you know, weird artifacts and weird lighting and stuff like that. And ultimately, I'm gonna bring it into Photoshop and paint on top and add textures and stuff like that. So I kind of just like, you know, whatever. I'll just paint it out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Can I ask you a question? Like, how much time does the modeling the scenery like that it takes you? Because I believe it's based on the napkin sketch that you did before, right?
yeah. So to do this, I pretty much spent all day yesterday doing this. So
Nice.
so I did this yesterday, but it did go a little bit quicker because I was using a lot of previously made parts that I've made for other concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the other reason why I wanted to load this up. So about a year ago, I decided to start making my own Kickback library for like environment concepts. Because I kind of started doing like a personal project, and I wanted there to be somewhat of a cohesive shape language across all the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And there was going to be a lot of architectural designs, interiors and exteriors. So I wanted to kind of come up with like a library of stuff. So I slowly kind of started just building like a Kickback library. So this stuff over here, this is just the pieces that I have for this environment.
Yes.
So this whole environment is pretty much just made from these pieces, but like repurposing them or like breaking them apart and reusing them, or, you know, selecting some verts and stretching them across. But the other kind of important thing for wanting to do this Kickback library was at the time I was doing a lot more of the 3D environment concept art, where I was building out a specific environment that needed to be, excuse me, thought out in a way that is conducive to building games in a game engine. And it's something I became really passionate about learning more about, is the idea of approaching a concept for an environment in the similar way that an environment artist would approach building their concept. Just because, you know, oftentimes, you know, you might be building an environment concept that looks awesome. You might even see some, you know, really great 3D concepts that are like fully fleshed out and stuff like that. But the way they're built and the way they're designed is not very modular. Mm-hmm. So from a game design standpoint, it's really important to be able to break those things down into individual pieces that can easily be reused to build larger environments.
Yeah, you can always multiply them.
Yeah, exactly. Because essentially, you know, with the majority of game environments, that's how they're built. They're built, you know, modularly and built in a way like Lego pieces to be able to snap together and build multiple other things from that. So, so I wanted to learn more of that kind of stuff. So I intentionally started kind of building out this Kickback library of pieces that I knew would all fit together and work together. So, but I found it really important in the same way that a lot of environment models are made in a way for lots of, you know, they're built in a way to get as much mileage out of them as possible. So I intentionally try to build a lot of these pieces in a way so that they can be used multiple ways. So for example, like this piece here can be used this way right here, or it can be...
Yeah, if you can bend it, it might be just a corner, right? Or you can just flip it. Yeah,
exactly. So like both sides are kind of designed out with a similar treatment, but if I wanted a wall trim that has this kind of downward facing 45-degree angle versus the upward, it's just a matter of using the same piece but flipping it. And then same goes for this piece. I could just flip that, and then
it's very smart way of using that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun too. It's because once you've built out a certain amount of stuff, it's really like it. I think it So working with 3D, like I think at first it doesn't feel as organic as sketching, and the process is kind of drawn out a little bit just by how sluggish some of the tools are.
Mm-hmm.
I find that like having a Kickback library, it goes back to what I said before, where I personally I need to see something in front of me really to kind of see where that final design would go. So by having a library of stuff that you can kind of quickly drop in, it closes that gap to make you, to have something in front of you sooner. So I think it just makes it a lot more organic. So let's see.
So you are always kind of prepared in case that you are like under time restriction, and you can just step those things, or maybe you can make like a rough estimation, kind of block out, and then you can fill that up with like Kickback parts for making nice details. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So this is my full library as it stands right now. So this is included with all the pieces over here, which are the ones that I was just showing. But some other stuff I've built from some other environments that I've used in other concepts that I've done recently. But I like to make them somewhat low poly and somewhat ambiguous. So like the shape language is kind of there, but I still have room to change things if I want to, depending on the concept. So on the current concept that I was working on in here, I did want to go for a slightly cleaner, still like a kind of sci-fi industrial look, but with a slightly cleaner surfaces. So I set up the pieces in a way that are easy to iterate on further from there. So I'm not necessarily locked in to what I have blocked out. I can kind of continue to work on that and refine it and change it based on what the current needs are.
Yeah, that's great. So they are always editable, basically. You can always just, cut things in parts. And
yeah, totally. It's it's really fun. It's kind of cliche, but like it really does like bring you back to like being a kid and playing with Legos. Except instead of Legos, you have all these like cool sci-fi, pieces and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a ton of fun.
Perfect.
Let's see. So typically, I kind of start with like a super simple block out like this. Like this is kind of like the first stage, like after the napkin sketch of just kind of blocking out the space. And for this particular one, I wanted there to be some sort of like hanging, like wall art or like sculpture. I was kind of thinking that like giving myself a little bit of like backstory was just like, which is I think super important to just infuse into the design of the environments. It was like what if like a super wealthy like mega corporation, let's just say for example like Apple or something like that, was secretly providing research and tech for military weaponry. And like this idea that on the surface they would still try and have this this look of being kind of clean and environment friendly, with like inviting colors and stuff like that. But ultimately, there it still might be like a military facility or something like that, or some sort of industrial thing that has a slightly kind of sinister
purposes.
Yeah, exactly. So I like the idea of infusing some sort of like juxtaposition or way of kind of challenging preconceptions. So even if it's something subtle that most people don't pick up on, I think just for myself, I like to kind of come up with some sort of storytelling just to help drive the design decisions. So yeah, I always start off with something like just super simple like this, and then what I will do is I actually bring it into Photoshop and I do a find edges filter to kind of almost like convert it into like a really cheesy line drawing.
Yeah. Okay.
But the reason I do that is then I can kind of just like lower the opacity, and then it's easier for me to like just sketch on top of.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I kind of essentially have my perspective grid, and then I can just start to go back to my napkin sketch and see, you know, like what things, you know, from there that I liked, that I wanted to try and you know, bring back in and without having to worry about plot out, you know, my perspective or anything like that. And this is essentially how I work all the time, just because it takes a lot of the pressure off of like designing something from scratch right in the beginning.
You have like a base that you can just, you know, always relate to, like you said, with the perspective, for instance, and you can purely focus only on the shapes and adding the design elements right now.
Yeah, exactly. And then I could kind of like specifically call out like individual pieces and just be like, okay, I need to design this pillar that will be used twice in here. I need to design these columns that will be repeated. So I can kind of just like just quickly, like these sketches are typically pretty rough. Like they're kind of, you know, they're either for myself or something to show like early on, like, hey, this is kind of the direction I was thinking about taking this, you know, but you know, typically it's nothing, you know, presentational. You know, it's not. I don't really consider myself the best draftsman either. So like it's oftentimes it's just enough to kind of.
No. I saw some of your sketches on top of your models, and they were great. So. You're just humble.
You're too kind, man.
Awesome stuff, man.
Dark, you sweet man.
It's all true.
So yeah,
it's all true.
So it's kind of just like this really simple stuff like this, you know, and then essentially from there I'm left with something pretty quick, like this, and just really quickly on like a multiply level layer will kind of block in, you know, some simple lighting, and I think this is a good time to like experiment and like try stuff out. So like I was toying with the idea like, oh, maybe the pillars have like hanging ivy or something like that, because I was thinking that this like hanging sculpture would have that kind of like green and yellow earth colors, and maybe to kind of mimic that and continue that theme, I'll have like actual foliage growing on in here and some potted plants. But I can, you know, I think the big thing is like figuring out how to break up the surfaces so they're not, it's not just strictly, you know, very linear, you know, just kind of horizontal shapes and stuff like that. Like how to break that up and get a nice breakup of, you know, big, medium, and small, and how to draw your attention into a specific place using, you know, leading lines and, you know, all that good stuff. So then after this stage, I'll go back to the 3D and I'll start to like change in, you know, like get in all these, you know, varying angles and, you know, stuff, you know, all this good stuff, and you know, all these different angles, and it's still keeping it pretty quick.
It's nicely show your design process for those things, actually. You know, like it's like a back and forth work.
Yeah, it's a constant back and forth. So then this is the next stage. So after that sketch, I'll bring it to this level. So I start to bring in some of those like the kit bash parts that I have from the previous projects. So then this is the sketch, and then I kind of bring it to this level. I get in all that stuff, see what's working, see what's not. There's still a few things in here that I haven't addressed yet, but I kind of have at least a better understanding of like the shape language I was going with. And in this case, it was a lot of like 45-degree angles, but with like slightly curved surfaces. So like, you know, angular, but still soft in a way. So then after that, I do the exact same thing where I go and I just put on the Find Edges filter. Let me see. And it's like my way of cheating instead of redrawing it every time, because it would just take too much time to go and redraw it every time. So I may as well utilize the model that I have. But then I can again just lower the opacity and then kind of just start to literally just do the same step, but address all the things that still need to be worked out and resolved. So now it's kind of, okay, well, I see like maybe this repeats too much. It's a little bit too linear, so I could break that up with something else here, like a ramp or something like that. And then, I still wanted to get another level in here with maybe, some stairs and, just breaking it up into small, manageable kind of, problems to solve, because right off the bat, if you try to solve every problem right in the beginning, it's just too intimidating, and you end up kind of noodling and trying to like figure it all out all in one go. And I personally I easily get overwhelmed, so I think a lot of my process has kind of evolved from my own anxieties I definitely wish I was one of those people who like just right off the bat can just like sketch awesome stuff. But I don't know. I think there's something to be said and something really fun about kind of just finding the design and starting with like an idea, but kind of as you go, that idea evolving and changing it to something new. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's better. Sometimes it's worse, but
yeah.
They can't all be zingers.
Do you have like any favorite like maybe resources or whatever, like articles that you like to look at, or finding new inspiration for your like personal sci-fi projects, like something that helps you dive into the nice science fictional or scientific ideas to explore?
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of like blogs and stuff that I really love to follow. Like what is it called? I can't recall off the top of my head. I think it's called Neuromancer. Mm-hmm. But there's also like another blog that's like just like aviation and like rocket stuff and that kind of stuff. It's just like a nice collection of all that really cool stuff all in one place. But I really love browsing Pinterest because it kind of its algorithm it uses for making like suggestions for similar stuff is really great, because oftentimes like it'll suggest something that is kind of similar but not really what you'd expected. So I like that. I can kind of find reference or inspiration that is maybe unexpected or coming from a place that I would not necessarily have looked specifically.
Yeah, it's like Google search by image a little bit, but a little bit.
Yeah,
more,
it's
I don't know, it's pre-selected sort of.
Yeah, I think there's like a little bit more like a chance of like getting something like unexpected and kind of different. Because sometimes you'll get an idea for an architectural piece or from like a shape of a building from like a motorcycle part, or like you were saying earlier about Star Wars, like getting the idea of like a ship based off of like a power tool or something like that. So I think the key is just being able to be open to that stuff like at all times. It's kind of just always have your ears perked and always be open to being inspired by anything and everything around you. I think I don't know, right now like my biggest inspirations in terms of like other artists are Obviously you guys are pretty awesome.
Oh, come
You guys are up there. No, totally. I mean, I've been following Level Up since you guys started. So
That's awesome. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. The stuff that JAMA is doing with the VR, like that's super.
Let's talk about VR. I've seen you've been exploring, this realm a little bit. I was doing that for quite a while too. Right now, I mean, quite a while, a month maybe, in terms of using it as a tool instead of a gimmick. And yeah, how do you find it? And which set are you using?
So I'll first start by saying, like, yeah, the stuff that you've been doing has been super inspirational because it's so new that there's like so few people doing cool stuff with it. So there's like only a handful of people who are doing truly awesome stuff with it. So
Yeah,
I think
thank
all
you.
those people.
My main interest there is, I think, to find a direct translation of the tool into the production pipeline, actually. So,
totally.
Yeah, something that JAMA is doing, which is not making it, a cool thing in VR, but let's take that thing out of VR and let's make a concept out of it, or let's, showcase it, or let's reuse it so that this tool has its own place in the pipeline. Yeah, this is super cool. This is Oculus Medium, right?
Yeah, so I've been messing around with Oculus Medium first. I just picked up Gravity Sketch, so I'm going to try that out next. The thing I like about using Medium is that like the tools are super simple, and the thing that I love about VR, like immediately as soon as I started using, I just picked up my Oculus maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started messing around with it, the first thing that I loved about it was, I don't know about you, maybe you can speak to this as well, but me personally, working in 3D, even still, I've always found this disconnect of it feeling like, just like the disconnect between, like your hand with what you're actually making. Like it's never as intuitive as sketching on paper, even in ZBrush. And I've messed around with ZBrush, and I've got a decent handle on ZBrush now. But even still, like it just felt, it just never felt as intuitive as sketching. And that's something that I've always wanted to achieve once I started working in 3D, and I haven't had that feeling until I started using the VR stuff. And it's super quick and it's super intuitive. I don't know what you think, but me personally, like I feel like I'm sketching.
Yeah, and that's what I would like everyone to do, because it's a tried VR, and now they're like evangelists, and they're like, holy shit, everyone buys Oculus now, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like we're all doing, because it's just so cool to see the new talent being translated. I mean, talent being translated to the new tool, and how people that are coming out only from, let's say, 2D space are suddenly creating 3D things, because there's no technical boundary anymore. There's just two controllers. It feels like a game, and suddenly you're able to create really complex things and push them, a lot further than I don't know, that would you like you would do if you would be creating it in the regular 3D software. So you don't have to go through that pain of learning how vertices work and how all of that things happen. Here you just grab controllers and splash things around. Obviously, it's not game ready. It's not a game asset. It's an awesome tool for exactly our job, I think, because it's not as good to be used in a game directly, but it's enough to be used in the concept, and it's just the best possible scenario here, because it's quick, it's rough, and I think with more time we'll get tools that are more precise, and I think at some point in a year or 2 or 3 we'll be able to actually create game-ready assets inside of VR. That's what I feel after grabbing Gravity Sketch. It's just so mind-blowingly accurate at some point.
Yeah, it's man, it's really exciting. Like I kind of compare it to like the first time I picked up a Wacom and like Photoshop. Like it's just completely new and it's just super exciting. I'm like kind of like addicted to it at this point. Like I just want to keep doing stuff in there because like
I bought Vive first and then I was like, holy shit, it's awesome and the tracking is amazing and all of that. I tried like 100 games using it, and I tried Oculus Medium through Revive, through the emulating app, and the controllers were just a little bit, it felt clunky. So I was like, well, I'm missing something here, right? And because Oculus Medium, the sculpting software was created only for Oculus. So I bought Oculus, and my girlfriend was looking at me really in the wrong way. I was like, you know, a VR frick. Yeah, but I like Oculus. I think I like Oculus a little more in terms of ergonomics and in terms of the controllers, but not in terms of tracking. I mean, tracking can be as accurate as Vive, but you need more sensors.
Yeah, totally. I pretty much have had the same conclusion, I think. I really like it. I also like that, like I can, you know, just sketch and stuff like that in VR and kind of just lounge in my chair. Like I don't necessarily have to set up a whole space.
Oh yeah, that's how I use it. Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a game space that I create to do it. You know, that was in the first 2 days, and then I was like, okay, let's just put it in my workspace and make it so I can just grab it, put it in my head, do something, export, put it in Cinema, and let's say do something with it, so that it's
totally. So real quick, just to kind of geek out, like while we're on the topic, like the other day I posted a video on Facebook of this this model like in Medium, and the thing that I thought was so cool about it was that like you could scale it up to like real scale, and I pretended to sit in one of these seats, and like I scaled it up to the correct scale so that like I was sitting in my chair in my home office, and like it was the same scale, so like it actually like it felt like I was sitting there and like I'm just looking around and stuff, and man, when I did that, I was like, holy shit, this is so cool.
Yeah, I've seen those posts on Facebook. I think you posted the ones from the yellow spaceship, right? The screenshots from
and the chair for sure as well.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, Darek, you have to try it, man.
Yeah, I will definitely.
Yeah, come over, man. I can show you the ways of the Force. It's really cool. Also about Oculus, I think I can wear it for a longer period of time than Vive. It's just a little bit lighter, and I don't sweat as much. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've never tried the Vive, but the Oculus. I tried out an earlier iteration a few years ago at GDC, and I remember I kind of got motion sick from it.
Yeah.
I think just at the time the frame rate it wasn't as high as it is now.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, I could keep it on for hours, and like it's super comfortable, and yeah, I get lost in the Oasis. I don't know if any of you guys are Ready Player One readers.
Oh no.
Oh, if you haven't read that book, you got to check it out.
All right, it's on the list. Actually, I'm just listening to some sci-fi classics on Audible right now, and it's a pretty cool way to, put some new creative uses.
Yeah, totally. I really like Ready Player One because like it's the whole story is pretty much about VR and like games and like nerd culture and stuff like that. So
yeah, we'll check it out. Actually, I was looking for some sci-fi book recommendations. So if you guys have any, hit me up. Open to suggestions here. And yeah, it looks like you have your model on Keyshot now.
Yeah, so this is the model after so after doing this sketch and then going back for a final pass in 3ds Max. That's kind of where I brought it to this stage, and then I exported it and brought it into Keyshot. So then, yeah, this is when I set up the render and all the lighting and stuff like that. But like, you can kind of see on here some examples of what I was talking about, how like this back thing's got some weird like artifacts like on the surface, and there's some weird shadows in here that shouldn't be there. And I used to like really care about that stuff. I used to try and like, clean it all up and then bring it back in. And then I realized, like, man, it's so much quicker to just paint it out in Photoshop. Like, you know, who cares?
Easy fix.
Yeah. So, but yeah, after this stage, that's kind of when I start to paint in like the atmosphere and like the refine some of the lighting and like the surface quality of some of the textures. And that's the thing I love really the most about Keyshot. I mean, it's the same with, you know, whatever render you're using, like Octane or whatever. But it's just getting that material information, like all the different like subtle differences in like the specularity and you know, that kind of stuff. It's hard to paint from your imagination, or even just like kind of copy from reference. And it's always nice to have a little bit of an advantage there.
Yeah,
you can kind of see how like.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, man.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, you can, like, even if you have just one object that's a specific material and like you want to add something new in there, you kind of know in that specific lighting scenario how that material reacts. So then it's easier to go and recreate it and kind of paint in new stuff, because you kind of like you already have that reference like in the scene.
Hello?
Hey.
Oh, I thought that we lost you.
Dark, you're lagging out a little bit, I think. We're losing you, man. Don't fall asleep.
Need some caffeine. Yeah, so like after this stage, like that's when like I do all the fun stuff and kind of
render high res, put it in Photoshop, right?
Yeah. Sometimes just depending on like the time I have, like I don't have a lot of time to let it render like real nice. So then it's kind of just, you know, I take whatever I can get and then, you know, paint back in all the details and stuff like that. But
yeah, you have all the information in there, especially like the most important, just the design, shapes, and the lighting, right? And then you can just have fun on that. And I think that's where the pressure is being pulled off of you, right? It's like, okay, now we can have fun, zone out, put some music on.
Yeah, totally. I think that's like the main thing that kind of, you know, dictates the different stages of like my process, is like, what can I do to take the pressure off? Like at every stage, I'm just like trying to like, you know, do whatever I can to make it easy on myself. I think that just, you know, whether that comes from like my own anxieties and stuff like that, but I think, you know, once you're working in a professional setting, like, and you have to make more decisions on the fly. I think whatever process you had definitely changes based on your experience, I think. I don't know, maybe you guys can speak to that, but I found that once I started working in a professional setting, like the way I worked was like completely different.
Absolutely. Yeah, it changes. Like it's a very organic process. And sometimes, like I was, when I was in my first in-house experience, I actually was put into the environment that I had to create 3D things. And before that, I didn't use any. So for me, it was like you know, at the beginning it was a little bit nightmarish, but with time you get used to it, and it's just another tool that you can use during your production pipeline, you know. So it's nothing really scary anymore. And it might be it might be at the beginning, because it might be, you know, oh, it's like so time consuming to learn that and all this stuff. But you know, just give it a go, just give it a try, and you know, if you actually try, it might happen that you love that, you know. So
yeah, it's totally true. I think once you're on a project where you kind of have to adapt and kind of think on your feet, yeah, it definitely kind of changes the way you approach certain things. But
it might be just dictated by your work, you know, by the client requirements, and it's like you might just gonna challenge yourself with something that maybe was not discovered by you yet, or you didn't try that before, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna try it, I'm gonna give it a go, and yeah, I like it. You know, you can make it. After a while, you just spend a little bit more time on learning that, and later on, it happens that you're gonna get used to that. So
yeah, totally. It's yeah, it's I think it's super important to constantly, you know, be open to, you know, what's new, and you know, new tools and you know, new techniques and stuff like that. Ultimately, you know, if you have a good understanding of, you know, the fundamentals, you know, learning a new tool is, you know, that's kind of the easy part, you know.
Yeah.
It's
I have two questions, and these are pretty simple. Is there any advice you would give to people who are starting out right now, struggling to get better? Is there any advice that resonated in you that you stuck to?
I can't think of anything specific right now. I think the big thing for me is when trying to improve. Okay, so I guess one tip that I mentioned to my students a lot, and I think is important, is especially like when you're trying to improve and get to the quality you need to be to work as a professional, like either in-house or freelance. I think it's important to kind of like almost, it's really difficult, but to almost like kind of shut your eyes to comparing your work to your peers. And instead constantly hold your work up to the work of people who are currently working professionally. And I think I think when you're trying to improve and you're still learning, or you're trying to get your first gig, it's easy to kind of hold your work up to people who are in the same level as you or have the same amount of experience as you, and say like, oh, you know, my work is as good as theirs, I should be okay, or my work is a little bit better than theirs, I should be okay. I think it's more beneficial to almost like, in a way, like not look at people like at that level of like at your same level as your peers. Like I think it's almost in a way it's more beneficial to just constantly like almost obsessively compare your work to the people working at the company you want to work at, because you're just like constantly kind of reminding yourself of the quality bar, and you know, because ultimately when studios are going to hire or you know, for an in-house job or for a freelance, ultimately they're going to compare your work to the work of the people who are currently working there. Mainly because when they hire you, they want that insurance. They want to know that there is as little of a transition as possible, that you will integrate into the pipeline seamlessly with little to no ramp-up time. So they want to know pretty much, you know, right from the start, your work will be at least as good as the people currently working there. So I think the other thing that I tell my students is that I I mentioned it earlier when talking about my personal experience that the whole like shotgun approach of just like sending your portfolio out to a ton of different places. I find that rarely actually works. I'm sure there are cases where that does work, but I think the most efficient way is to actually kind of instead of shotgun, kind of snipe and specifically go after specific jobs, which can be a little challenging and a little stressful, but ultimately I think it's better to kind of come up with like a list, and that's actually kind of what I did when I was first trying to get a job. And that actually is a piece of advice someone gave me. It was actually an HR person at ArenaNet. They had told me when I was at GDC that the shotgun approach doesn't work. What you need to do is you need to come up with a list. You need to come up with a list of like the 5 game studios or 5 projects that would be like the studios you want to work at or the projects you want to work at, and make a portfolio that fits with those projects or those studios.
This is gold, man. This is exactly what I would say to anyone asking me that question, and that's exactly what I've been saying. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's because what ends up happening is I would say in most cases, you can come up with like 5, right? Because if there are 5 of your top studios or projects you want to work on, and that's based off of like your personal taste and what you like, most likely they're similar enough to where you can get away with making probably just one portfolio that kind of fits all those projects or kind of hits some of those points, right?
But there is a problem once somebody like finds Blizzard and Bethesda in one,
that's totally that's true.
That's just being enthusiastic about your choices.
Yeah, exactly. It's it is also important to be realistic, especially when kind of getting your foot in the door. So like a lot of mobile studios are mobile studios I think are always more open to hiring entry level people. But going back to what I was saying, when working on a specific portfolio, you're essentially left with a portfolio of work that would essentially fit in with those projects. Again, just like hiring managers or talent acquisition, they look at that stuff, and the first people to have eyes on your portfolio are not necessarily always artists. They're not necessarily always the art director or fellow concept artists. They're usually HR or talent acquisition, and they are trained to kind of keep an eye out for the kind of qualities they look for. But essentially, what they're looking for is, does their work look like our work?
Yeah,
and
that's a really good
essentially, that's the big thing, I think.
Sniping instead of going all in and shotgunning everyone in the possible proximity of your. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, 100%. I think it looks a little unfocused when your portfolio has like a little bit of everything. I mean, your personal taste might be kind of general and just like have a little bit of everything, but when showing your portfolio and kind of crafting your portfolio to get a job, you do want to at least appear to have intention behind the subject matter and whatever it is you are deciding to design and stuff like that. It makes you look more focused, and I think just it gives you the appearance, whether it's true or not, that you are very careful with what you're deciding to put out there.
Yeah, and I think I can also identify with people that are in the spot where it's hard to sort of focus on only one direction for them because they feel like they're missing out on something else. If you know what I mean, let's say somebody that does a little bit of character work, a little bit of environment work, a little bit of prop work, and suddenly they have to choose one path that they will sort of specialize in for this particular studio job, and suddenly they are faced with a fear, because it's freaking hard to put stops on those things that you also like, but at the same time you have to put the most time in that one thing to sort of laser focus and get better at that one thing so that you get hired. I think I can identify with those that are having a hard time to disqualify things. I mean, temporally, obviously, but that's something that I had to do too. So I understand, because I was at a thing when I was doing a lot of portrait work, and I was doing I loved movies too, and I was doing keyframe stuff. And at some point, I was just like, "Fuck! It looks like I have like a polar, behavior when my mind is polarized to two different personalities, and I don't know what I want." And yeah, I think that's the best advice you could actually give. What Ken is saying, finding that 1, 2, 3 studios that you love, finding artists that are working in there. Finding their work, looking at art books, freaking printing it all over your walls, looking at it,
totally.
Yeah, putting your work in there. Does it fit? No? Okay, get back to work. Again, does it fit? No, get back to work. And, repeat it 10,000 times until you have 10 pieces. I think 10 is enough, and send it and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, totally. It's I think that's the best approach. I totally agree, though. It's really difficult to kind of like, to a certain extent, a lot of people, just love making art. So I think you're already kind of like limiting yourself by saying, okay, I want to be a concept artist.
Yeah.
And then even more so, you have to be like, okay, I want to make these kinds of designs or these kinds of work with these types of subjects. And then even more so, there's the whole thing with like, oh, do I focus on characters or do I focus on environments? It's really difficult to make those decisions, and it's I totally get that. It's stressful. It's a lot of people ask me like, oh, should you have characters? Should you have environments? I personally think that if you I don't think you necessarily have to specialize in one or the other.
Yeah.
I think it's always good to show that you can do both really well. I feel like if a studio is looking at multiple portfolios and it comes down to someone, say for example, just 2 people, and both of their work is phenomenal, but one person is good at characters and the other person is good at characters and environments. Mm-hmm. Right there you're going to have a clear advantage. Yeah. But it's not always the case. Like if in my case, for example, I never really considered myself very well versed in like anatomy and like character design. It's something I've been in my free time getting better at here and there, and I've kind of made it a point on myself to get better at character design. But I think whatever it is you're passionate about, just do it until you are freaking awesome at it. And there will be a job for you. Like, for example, it might be more difficult to get a job, but if you're obsessed with robots and you only want to do robots, get so good that you are like the go-to person for robots.
Yeah.
And then
yeah, that's a great.
I mean, it's more difficult because you're closing yourself off to a lot more opportunities. But
at the same time, if you are hitting a niche, there are only a few people that are really great about doing those things, right?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it's just I think the key point is to just be strategic and be intentional with any of your decisions that you make. And I think that will, it's the good way to go.
Yeah, and I think we will be wrapping up right now. We also have one last question for you, the question that we ask all of our guests. But we don't even know where the question comes from, but let's do it. Okay, Ken, would you rather be a Godzilla or a billionaire, and why? Which would you choose?
Oh, jeez. I should have prepared for this question.
No way, man. This is why we do it, because we talk serious stuff, and suddenly something like that hits you.
I knew it was coming. I don't know why I didn't prepare for this one. This is a tough one.
Yeah.
I think I would be a billionaire.
There you go.
Godzilla, don't get me wrong, is pretty awesome. But if you're Godzilla, then you're misunderstood, and people are gonna try and shoot you with missiles and stuff. And I'm not sure if I'm down with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. That was great.
That's
really
a really good answer.
And, yeah, tons of advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's really honor.
Yeah, man.
To come on and talk.
We are fans, man. Great work, and keep it up. Can't wait where you take your personal project to, and maybe you can hit us up once again when you have some more stuff, and we can update our audience on where you're going to take it and stuff. So we can wait for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Sounds awesome. Thanks, man. And we have 2 announcements as the final part of this session. So maybe Wojtek, you can go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So this is our new Discord channel. If you don't know what Discord is, it's basically a messaging app and forums app, and you can talk in different channels here. And if you are from France, Poland, Germany, China, and so on, you can talk to level up people from your country and connect with them. Also, you can talk in voice channels, although not a lot of people are doing that, but there's a lot of traffic in those channels here. You can get critiqued, and you can talk 3D, you can talk illustration, you can talk concept art. So I'm just encouraging everyone to join. You can join by getting on this link in your browser. Just pause the video and type it in. We'll also put it in the video description once it's up, so you can all join and enjoy. So that's besides our, obviously, Level Up Facebook group, which is over, I don't know how many people now, something around 120,000, which is crazy. And we can all see it grow, but this is also something people requested a lot, to be able to interact in a little bit different way here without Facebook, and I think it's great. So if you are interested in getting better and meeting other artists, go on, hit this link, and you can chat and get better together. So Discord, awesome.
Yeah, and also we did one of the session that was focused on doing for people overpaints.
From time to time we'll jump into those voice channels and sort of see what's happening and maybe critique some work in there. So if you're there, you may want to, you may be able to talk to us too if you want. So we hang around there too.
Okay, that sounds great, man.
That's awesome, guys.
Papa, we have one more thing to say, right?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to get that a guy online to join us on the session, because we have an announcement for a Level Up session somewhere in the world. Okay, so let me just...
Yeah, this will be a split session, sort of. So, Darek, should I wait for the person? Or...
Yeah, I just sent him a link. He is on the chat. He's joining, so... I believe so. If he's not joining, we can wrap up and maybe we can announce it on the next session. But he was waiting, so.
Yeah, okay. So maybe let's start talking about it. And so basically it will be a split session, sort of. We know Jonas is missing recently. He is doing a lot of travels. And we're trying to get him on board, but it's hard to sort of fill the times in. I know you guys miss him, but he misses you too. And we'll try to get this motherfucker in here, finally. And I think that will be the time when he'll be here. So basically, we are planning a split session. There will be a workshop.
Let me just share my screen.
Yeah, exactly. There will be a workshop in Eindhoven, right?
Eindhoven, yeah.
Eindhoven. And Darek is going to be there, and he will be running a level up session with one of the guests during the workshop, and you can see the workshop on the screen.
Yeah, can you see my screen right now? Is it working?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so it's a big gathering of tons of talents, and if you can get there, do it, and you'll have tons of fun, and you'll meet Darek, and you will see our level up session live with me connected through the internet.
Yeah,
and
actually,
Jonas connected to the internet.
Yeah,
and
the thing is, we plan to be there all because last year I was part of the artists that were talking on this festival. It's called Playgrounds, and it's made by Dutch guys. It was last year. It was in Amsterdam. This year it's in Eindhoven. And the plan was to do like a live level up session with as Wojtek mentioned, one of our the guests that might be there. So we're gonna pick up. We have to actually talk to the presenters and to do like a level up session. But Wojtek has some trip, and Jonas is all over the place. So,
yeah, it's really unfortunate because I really wanted to be there, and at the same time. There were plans and I just couldn't make it, but I will still be there through the power of the internet, and I can see
we have Jort and Pauline as director of the Playgrounds, right? So guys, can you just talk a little bit more in depth about this program and this event, and I will just keep my screen on shared so I can
Yeah, sure, man. Ken, you're still around as well, right?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, nice to finally meet you. Just wanted to say, man, I love your work, and it was so awesome to see you on this stream. So thanks for allowing us on this stream a little bit as well. Cool. So
your work too.
Yeah, Wojtek and Darek, thank you so much for giving us a bit of time on this stream. And yeah, so Pauline, the marketing director of festival, of Playgrounds Festival, will just start talking about the festival itself, and then I'll just start talking about some of the stuff that we'll be doing in October.
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Sure.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Well, I just wanted to give you some insight about Playgrounds because we are around for 11 years this year. And it's been founded by Leon van Rooij, and was once one day in a city in the south of the Netherlands, and it turned out to be 5 days in 2 cities, reaching out to 4,000 professionals in the industry. And as of this year, we've changed everything. And we've decided to do something called Playground Sessions. So something like that's like a mini fest in several cities in the Netherlands. And we've decided to do a whole new event called the Art Department. And that's where Jort comes in. He's so kind to co-curate it with us, together with Leon Tucker and Bo Zonneveld too. And now we're here talking about the program that is still not finished yet, but it's over. The lineup is pretty big and amazing.
Yeah, the lineup is already really, wide with a lot of really great artists. And we actually wanted to ask you guys if there's because we will do this session, I will be there, Wojtek will be joining us via internet, and we're gonna do a session with one of the presenters there. Do you think is it possible to get maybe Jan Urschel or Jesse Van Dyke on the session, and we could do a streaming session from there, connecting via internet, and do a regular session from there? That would be great, actually.
Well, let's talk about it, and then and let's maybe we can realize it, of course.
Actually, Jan Urschel was just walking past, so because I'm in the industry workshops, I'm not sure if you're aware. It's just the last day, just final closing drink, so I'll just poke him and see if he's up for that.
Do that. He is a real inspiration, and a lot of people requested, would love to see him on the session, and that will be actually mind-blowing to have Darek and Jan in there. in real life, and then us joining in and just having this fun together online. That would be awesome.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, that's what we intended in the first place. I mean, because Playgrounds is a community event. To have you guys as level up, you know, as you guys are one of the first guys that really started an online community, and to have you part of this is a real honor and a real pleasure. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many awesome speakers, but also just visitors that are you know, super talented. I know that Stephen Corman will probably be there as well, and not as a speaker, maybe with just a visitor. So we have lots of options really available, and you know, lots of people that we still haven't announced as well. So
okay, so we have like
that's just gonna be great. There's
awesome.
lots of options.
So we have still like open doors to talk it, you know, after the session, or you know.
Yeah, maybe you could do a small poll on the Level Up group and just see what's possible, and then we could just ask the speakers if they're. I don't know. It's just an idea, you know. Community event, you know, powered by the community. So that could be great.
Absolutely. But yeah,
so the conference lasts 2 days, right? And do you have sort of any features you wanted to highlight that you think are special about this event?
Yeah, so this event, we like, you know, every event should have its own identity, and for us, the identity is really about the creative spirit, but also about transferring the creative spirit and the creative industry in general more towards students. I mean, you see that in a lot of the stuff. So one thing that I'm really proud of that it wasn't my own idea actually, but I'm really proud that we do that is we really showcase the work of upcoming artists, you know, in the Netherlands and maybe in future events also for other countries, and really give them a sort of a place where they can, you know, get some more attention and maybe get that, you know, that one connection with a client or with an art director to get them hired. Another thing that yeah, I can't say a lot about, but we have a really exciting evening program as well. That we're setting up right now. Just do something really cool and close, and yeah, we're really trying to yeah, just try lots of new stuff, and yeah, we're working with Wacom as well. Wacom is one of our main sponsors, so we're setting up a small overpaint area where both speakers and talented guests can come and show their skills.
Yeah, that's a really great idea, actually. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think more events focused directly on the participants rather than the. I mean,
yeah.
Maybe I sound wrong, but what I wanted to say is that even equally focus on the speakers as is it on the guests, and the other way around. So it just feels more unified and even, so that the speakers are not separated from the guests, and you know, there's no that.
Absolutely.
That's the idea. Yeah. It's about sharing knowledge.
Yeah, sharing and connecting, like interaction.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. How do we get tickets then? Where do we go? What do we do?
You go to playgroundsfestival.nl.
Yeah.
And
playgroundsfestival.nl. Okay.
Yeah.
And there is a ticket area, right? Like
yes.
Go there. So, well, what we can tell you right now, guys, just go and buy the tickets, and we see you there.
Still early birds, and it's in a great venue too. So
yeah, we're in the old Philips factory in Eindhoven. So I mean, it's a super industrial site. It's kind of similar to where I mean, if any one of you have ever been to industry workshops, kind of similar to that as well. It's just a little bit bigger because the factory is bigger. But then again, we also have twice as many attendees as industry workshops, so it fits quite well.
That's awesome. And the ticket is around €50, more or less?
75 at the moment. Yeah.
For 2 days.
75. Wow, that's for 2-day workshop.
That's a great deal, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right.
I think
we will make sure to post the link
the
event page and on under the video, so that you can grab the tickets. I think it's a great deal. If you like, the location is also great in terms of Europe, because you can just fly in from anywhere, and Eindhoven is being an airport of connections to a lot of connections.
Absolutely.
Flights in there. So I guess we will see each other during the session then. Thank you so much for coming.
We will definitely discuss more details offline of the session. So, but we are happy to have you here, and I'm really happy that you guys invited me again, and I can be, you know, part of the Level Up doing that. And I believe it's something that was quite missing, especially that we didn't do much Level Ups on the events yet. So we definitely gonna explore that, since we actually brought back Level Up to the on the track with doing the more regular sessions, and that would be actually a great experience. So
cool, man.
Yeah,
And thanks again so much for having us on the stream. We really appreciate
worries,
that.
absolutely, man. I just told you that it's the right time, and we just wanted to do that properly.
Yeah, I love seeing more and more events growing around Europe. There was IFCC 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Promised Land 2 years ago. Playgrounds has been doing it for a long time, as you're saying it, but now it's getting.
But it's just a proper art department right now, right? So,
and awesome. Yeah, this is great.
Super exciting. I hope I could make it out there.
Kenneth, we'll arrange something, man. Don't worry about that.
Just fly that man there.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, as Pauline said, we do a bunch of events. So after October, I mean, if people can't make it to our event October, the next one is going to be in the 18th of April in Amsterdam. We're already planning for that. So we already have some really exciting speakers that really like to attend there. So
Nice.
if you can't make it to October, just keep your eyes on the lookout for the next one in April in Amsterdam.
That's awesome.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much, Yep.
All right, guys, I think we can wrap up here. We will definitely post the writing post about that, and we will do like a more promoting stuff for those guys, because I know that they are working hard to get that, and we appreciate it, and we definitely want to be part of that. So thank you guys for joining us. Thanks, Ken, for amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks
man.
for having
session.
us.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for having me.
Hey.
Absolutely. See you guys soon, and on to the next session. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.